the Amiga answers Wonder Boy with the Viking Child, plus the latest Amiga news on Amigos, everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about Prophecy 1, the Viking Child.
That's a mouthful, Boat. Let's get into it. That's a catchy love tune from
I do like it.
Viking Child. Can we just call it the Viking Child for short?
Let's I think the Viking Child is what we'll refer to it.
Because there's a lot. That's a long, drawn out name. I always wonder how they come across these huge names, especially since this is the only one they made.
Well, I feel like you've got to have delusions of grandeur to call your first name something Part 1, unless it's like, you know.
I always like
even Star Wars didn't do that, you know?
Yeah, it was Part 4. That's what made
right.
Even as a kid, I was like, what do we miss? I don't know what's happening.
Do you remember Leonard Part 6?
Yeah. I didn't hate it as much as a lot of people, but it was still horrible. It was better than Ghost Dad.
Child. Yeah, well,
that's true. There are reasons to be scared of that now that have nothing to do with it being a kid, that's for sure. So, Bo, had you played this bad boy before it honed into view?
I'd never played Prophecy 1, the Viking Child, and I probably never would have, just because that name screams to me like drawn out RPG, like perhaps even dungeon crawler. With a name with that many words in it, I'd stay away.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, let's get into the particulars here, and then we'll jump into the meat of it. Prophecy 1, the Viking Child, released on the Amiga in 1990. Now, everything I read, Bo, says this came trotting across from the Atari ST. In fact, there's a blurb on, I believe it was on Hall of Light, that says this was programmed on a Mega ST Atari computer, and the graphics were drawn with the Atari graphics package called Neochrome.
Okay.
So there you go. So there's a little tidbit there. The only place I read that, but hey, they're good over there. This was published by an outfit called Electronic Zoo, Unusual, and developed. You've got this is co-developed. So I tried to dig into what the heck was going on with this, and I couldn't find it. So I'll just give you what I got. This was co-developed by Imagitech Design and Wired Software. Now, Imagitech Design have done a bunch of stuff on the Amiga. It's funny, they did more stuff than I would even remember, Boat. They did Airborne Ranger, which is a pretty popular game across multiple platforms. They did American Gladiators. We got to play that one of these days.
I'd love to play that.
Butcher Hill, Combo Racer, Combo Racer, and the Human series, your favorite. More human than human. Wired Software, this is their only offering, from what I could tell. This is also, this is one of those games that have like tons and tons of weird credits. The copyright on it is, first of all, it's got a copyright listing from DMA Systems and IDL Group.
Right. And don't be fooled. This is not DMA Design.
No. I was fooled at first, yeah. 2
development houses with DMA in it. That's unfortunate.
The design on this is credited like a list of this. This is the design credits. Nigel Cook, Mark Fisher, Anthony Rossbottom, Martin Hooley, and Neil Young.
Old man, take a look at me now.
And the manager of this is listed as Mark Fisher, and the coder is Mark Fisher. Mark Fisher also coded Airborne Ranger and Special Forces. This is slightly outside of his wheelhouse, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's funny, I feel like so many times in the software development trade, you get one shot to make your game, and this was Mark Fisher's one shot.
Yeah,
he was the coder, he did the design, he wrote the story, he did everything. And I was looking at his credits on Moby, and this was definitely his time in the spotlight. Then after this game, he went back to being a programmer, and then he sort of had a Dean Bent-like existence after this game.
He got around. What you're saying?
Yeah, he got around.
Good, nice. Hey, I'm always for a Dean Bent name drop, brother.
Yeah, man.
But big shout out to Dean. Graphics on this were done by the aforementioned Anthony Rossbottom. and Andrew Gilmore. Ross Bottom also worked on Airborne Ranger, Butcher Hill Special Forces, and Andrew Gilmore worked on the Humans, the American Gladiators, and of course one of our favorites, the brutal Paws of Fury.
Oh yeah,
a real dud. Now the music on this, this game is comprised of 22 big tracks, I believe. It's a ton
huge.
Of tracks. Was Barry Leitch. This guy has done a ton. Just to name some of his more famous offerings. Of course, he worked on Supercars 2, Lotus 2, Silkworm, Harlequin, which we looked at, the Human series, Hero Quest, a ton of stuff. So, I mean, this guy, he's another guy. You don't really hear a ton about him, but like of course, you do hear about his Lotus stuff. But I mean, he's a prolific. He worked everywhere. He's got tons of credits.
Yeah.
I mentioned
he's right up there with Bremble and all, any of the big names on the.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Boat. This was released on. I'm not gonna lie. I was astounded at the number of systems this was released on. I'm just gonna run them off again. As far as I can tell, this was designed on the Atari ST, and the Atari and the Amiga version were both released in '90. There's a DOS port from '91, along with a Lynx port. That's our Atari Lynx port. A Game Boy port in '92, and then this eventually made its way on to Steam and whatnot, and so you can find a Linux, Windows, and Macintosh port that came out in 2017. I'm guessing that's because you can get it off Steam or whatnot. Now, I can't confirm this. I only read it one spot, but I'm going to throw it in. They had planned to do more ports than this. All right, I don't know if you saw this anywhere. Apparently, work was either contemplated or began on the Game Gear, the Master System, and the C64.
Well, I'm telling you, these games that were released in that 90 through 92 time period, that was probably the most crowded the console market ever was. Yeah. Because you still had a lot of people real interested in the 8-bit systems, the Master System, the NES. Plus, you had all the 16-bit computers. And then right around the corner, the Genesis is hitting its stride, the Super Nintendo in 91. So, and then all of the came and went handheld systems like the Lynx and the Game Gear. So I wasn't that surprised that this game got ported to so many different outfits. I do believe that the Game Boy port was a EU only release. I don't think it got an American release. Could be wrong about that. In fact, I think I am wrong. I just checked on Moby, so I take that back.
Self-correcting.
But it didn't surprise me that this game made it to so many different systems.
Well, if you look at this game, and we'll get to it in a minute, this game doesn't scream high system demand to me when it comes
not
to
at all.
Now, so can I see this getting easily this could have went to the Game Gear, the Master System, and the C64, sure, I'll buy it. Here's a tidbit I thought you might find amusing. I found this on this brilliant line on Moby, I believe. A planned sequel, Viking Child 2, was not released. So someone put out on a limb there. Just to round it off, when this debuted, you were looking at a price tag of £24, 99p on this one, Boat. Now, I know how you are. You've really taken a turn the last couple years and dipped it deeply into the flavor text and the stories behind these. Because back in the old days, you skipped everything. You were skipping the route.
Button. Yep.
Did you happen to watch the incredibly long text?
I did.
Scroll at the beginning.
This is the beginning of this game is the first of many missed opportunities, because this game does have a lengthy backstory, but it's so lengthy and it's presented in such a slow way that by the time that you get to the end of the story, you can't remember what the beginning of the story was.
It's not even that lengthy. I mean, if you could summarize this in like about 4 words: village destroyed, kill assassin. Yeah.
This has got your Norse mythology in there. Loki is the bad guy. The name of the world is Odin's world. So they've wrapped that up into this. Of course, the Viking Child. This guy, if this is what Vikings were like as children, the Vikings would not have ravaged anybody. I'll tell you that right now.
This is why the Spartans tossed babies off cliffs right here.
Yeah.
This is the biggest dork. I mean, in a sea of geeks. So let's just talk about before I get into this thing. This game comes up. It's not what I would call option filled as it comes up. You get
Music
the
or sound
option of
effects.
music or sound effects. That's all you've got. And then you're in. Okay. So this is an adventure platformer. I think that's a fair way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
With exploration that you're punished for, but you'll have a choice. And the screen is really broken down into two separate areas. 1/3 of the bottom of the screen is for all your inventory, your score, what level you're on, money, health, time. And then the top 2/3 is devoted to the game screen itself. But we got to have a huge frame, an ornate frame that goes around us. This breaks the Dreamcatcher rule fully by donating. How much would you say? Like maybe 3/5 of the screen is the actual gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 3/5.
It was a little overkill. There's probably an easier way to have portrayed all this stuff. Although you do have a massive amount of stuff to keep track of. To be fair, and
this would be one of those games that you really could use with a pause screen to give you this information, because it's not something that you need to be switching between a lot of things on the fly that you need to have on the screen all the time.
Yeah.
And since you have to take your hands off the joystick to switch the items anyway, pressing spacebar to get to the equip screen probably would have been a good idea, because that would have gotten rid of the HUD. Who knows, though, what kind of performance hit this game might have taken if it were being forced to be displayed in full screen.
It's amazing. Yeah, I hope the sarcasm came through the microphone there. Do you want to briefly tell the people the opening narrative before we get into it?
I can't. It's something, like you said, it's something about he's living in his village. All the villagers are dead. He sets off on a mission of revenge.
They're not dead. They're in like the negative zone. Remember the
negative zone? Okay.
Yeah, there's a picture of them like so. Well, I guess I'll look. I read it, but by the way, for just to know that you are instantly going to be screwed, you have to use the keyboard to pick sound effects and music. That was a bad omen for the amount of times you're going to be touching the keyboard in this. The couch experience is not to be had with this one.
No.
But the long story short, this geek goes out to run an errand for his mom, and while he's gone, basically a whirlwind comes and destroys the whole town. And by Loki, and then on top of that, Loki captures the whole town in this like Phantom Zone. There's a picture of him on the scroll, by the way. How'd they pull that off? But there's a picture on the scroll of all the townspeople giving it the old Phantom Zone, like this bit, like they're looking at him.
It was the artist's rendition. He was like a courtroom reporter.
I mean, that guy should have done the art for the game. But and so Odin comes down. He's like, "Listen, yon geek. It's time for you to step up and become a man, and you got to go and rescue. You've got to go through all the lands. You got to go through the lands to get to and then eventually, once you get through all the lands, you can go to Loki's land and take him on. Which thanks, Odin. You're all powerful. How about a little love? Mm-hmm. And unlike say something like, I mean, there are plenty of games where like Odin will bestow something on you. Here's some here's a better sword. No, like that game me and Brent play where you play the jester, like Merlin gives you the magical like cod piece of fire, something. So Odin doesn't give you jack squat. He's like, good luck, geek. And then you're off. So I hope that's an adequate setup for what you're.
I think that's good.
Now, did you pick? I mean, by the way, the playthrough you sent me, is this you playing right here? Because
this is not me playing. What I did was I took a video of another guy playing, and I blew it up and I made it look better, and I cropped him out of it.
Yeah, it looked good.
Thank you, random guy from YouTube. I'll remember your name one day.
So the reason I ask is I thought I was going to give you props for very competent play. So do you want to since this is more in your line, do you want to talk about the gameplay proper here, Boat?
Yeah. So this game comes hot on the heels, 2 or 3 years after the release of a popular Master System game called Wonder Boy 2. And Wonder Boy 2 is a game that combines platforming, exploration, and light role-playing elements real light role-playing elements to kind of form a fun adventure. This game does the same thing. You are set loose in an environment in which you are moving around a stage that is not. It's more linear than your average Euro platformer. There's not a lot of places where you can really get lost, but you do have different pathways you can take And there are secret areas that you can find in these games. And so you're set out, and you're equipped with a sword, and you go out and you kill enemies with your sword. They drop gold. You collect the gold, and then scattered throughout this land, it's a thriving economy in the world of Prophecy 1: The Viking Child.
Yeah.
There's shops on every corner, and you go into the shops, and you can use your money to purchase special weapons, to purchase health upgrades, and to purchase special character upgrades like the glide, the cloak, and the speed upgrade. You can purchase extra men. There's no limit to what you can purchase. And each store offers different items. When you go into the store, this is probably the section of the game that is most like Wonder Boy. You get the view behind the counter. There's a shopkeeper there. It's either a man or a woman. And like in Wonder Boy, where they kind of jive with you conversationally, they just kind of stare at you with a blank death face as you make your purchases. There's a little goblin that manages the store with the person. The goblin kicks the items off the shelf into your arms.
I would love to have the goblin from Barbarian that would kick the head across the screen when you beheaded it.
This is what he does on his off days.
Yeah, he's got to have a real job. That's what he does for fun. That's a side gig.
And so what you do in this game is you move from area to area, but you have to find a key to unlock doors. Okay, so what you can do is you can explore the stage in its entirety, but unless you find the area where the key is, then you're not able to leave the area. And usually to find the key, you have to defeat a boss character. So this is a game where you're moving around. You're trying to find the boss. You defeat the boss, you get the key, and then you move to the far right of the area, and then you can leave the area and move on to the next one. This game does have certain identifiers that make it seem like it's from the more modern era. It does have an overworld map that shows you your approximate location as you move throughout Odin's world. Like I said, that you are able to switch between various items using the keyboard. This is a game that, it's a very okay PC platforming game. Nobody would mistake this game for being anything other than what you'd find on a computer. I don't think that you could find a game with a HUD that massive on the console. They just don't exist. And so, but again, you're trying to get around the fact that you only have one button to work with. And so this is what they gave us. Aaron, what did you think of Prophecy: The Viking Child?
Well, I'm going to start. First of all, I'm going to start at the beginning of this thing. When it comes up, because I'd heard, I've got a bunch of Master System games, as you know. I got a collection in there.
Yeah.
And one of the games I heard this compared to over and over was Wonder Boy in Monster Land. Right?
That's right. Wonder Boy 2.
And so I've played that, and it absolutely is like that. And when I say that, I mean, gameplay-wise, it reminds me of that. But in terms of, in Wonder Boy, on the humble Master System, I would say it's just less goofy looking. It's not a graphical tour de force. This thing comes up, and to me, it screamed like early 90s DOS. Just goofy.
This is your Jill of the Jungle. This is your Jazz Jackrabbit. It's from that school.
It wasn't that good. It's not as good. But I mean, just dopey looking. The hero is a geek. Like, the plot is dopey. The lands are dopey looking. The enemies are just annoying little critters and goofs. Until you get the part where you actually fight dudes. Your attack is it's pathetic. It's a pathetic attack until you get the magic. You just look like a geek. And then on top of everything else, it requires you to use the keyboard to switch between the weapons. I'm begging the WHD load people, the geniuses, God bless them, but for God's sakes, get us a second button in there so we can move that thing around. Because I happen to get up and fool with the keyboard every so often. It's not the worst. It's not the worst game. You can find somewhere to stop and do it. But it's almost like they said, here's what Boat doesn't like. And by the way, me too. Let's break every Boat rule. It's got slow, floaty, jumping. It's got. I did get lost multiple times. The very first level, no one told me you jump in this well. I just went to the end of the level. I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
If you don't jump in the well, then you can't progress.
If it wasn't for the playthrough I watched, I'd have been boned. I had no idea. Did you?
No, I had to watch a playthrough because I had no idea. And this game it's very rudimentary in terms of its programming, because this is a game where you are in the center of the screen the whole time, and whenever you move, the screen moves around you. So whenever you jump, the screen jumps. And this is something that, in the console platforming world, we'd gotten beyond a long time before.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, the Euro platforming scene was kind of in a case of arrested development at this time. But a lot of it too was done on the Atari ST. Maybe the Atari ST, in terms of scrolling, had trouble with, you had to make it like this. I'm not sure what the sort of technical limitations might have been. I know on the Addams Family, even though it's a flip screen scroller, you still don't get the same sort of like the whole screen moves with you type environment.
Well, I think they meant to do it. Other shortcomings, we mentioned the geek. Here's something else we both hate. Respawning enemies all the time. They never stop. They're always there. So you've had to deal with that. Now, I can understand why they did it, which I'll get to, but that's something they never stop. So there's that. The fact that you've got a pretty tight timetable that when that little hourglass thing runs out, you just die, and you're on your next match.
When the hourglass runs out, you lose hearts. You lose hearts when the hourglass runs out. In this game, you are blessed with a very generous heart meter, but unlike most games, you're constantly, just like Gauntlet or something, you're losing health just by playing, because whenever the hourglass runs out of sand on one side, you lose a heart.
Yeah.
So this is a game that encourages you to explore, but it also punishes you for exploring.
I hated that. I hated that aspect of it as well, because this is it. I mean, can you imagine putting like a time limit on something like Super Frog or Turk? And I mean, Turk, it does have one, but it's not this tight. I mean, you're trying to get around,
I think
with that?
I think that time limits stuck around in all platforming games longer than they should have. I mean, there's timers in all the Super Mario Brothers, and so I think that what you don't want is the fact that, like, your health, when you can't get health from enemies, that's a big difference between Wonder Boy and this game. In Wonder Boy, you get coins and you can get hearts. In this game, you only get coins. So when you go to the shop, you have to choose between, do I want to buy this cool item or do I want to heal myself? And that's a bad choice to give a gamer, because
you get some sort of diamond things or something too, some kind of red sapphires, and I wasn't sure what those did.
That stuff is I think that's just your score, because this is also a score game. It's a pointless score, but it is a score. To me, this game could have been made a lot better if it would have just adopted one of the cooler things about Wonder Boy, and that is, Aaron, when you play an adventure game and you have the ability to buy a lot of equipment, one of the coolest things as a player is when you buy the Sword of Thunder or the Whip of Flame. You get out there and then you hit your weapon button, all of a sudden you see the Whip of Flame whipping out there. Or when you get the golden armor, you leave the store and all of a sudden your character looks like he's wearing golden armor. That's what Wonder Boy did. Whenever you equip like awesome boots, the boots of wings or whatever, you see your character's sprite change. In this game, there are no weapon upgrades. There are special weapons, but they're all available to you. It's just like, projectiles basically. And you can get different things that impact your character, like the speed and the cloak and the glide. But there's nothing that changes you're always going to be wielding that crappy sword. You're all going to be dressed in your gray tunic garb. This game should have stolen that from Wonder Boy, where you can upgrade your character and actually change the look of your character. To me, that would have made the game a lot more playable.
I will say, I've buried this because there's plenty to not like. All right, but now I'm going to do the unthinkable. I'm going to praise this game. And I'll tell you why. I praise it for its evil. All right. I've played a lot. This game is very, very reminiscent. It has a lot of console-y roots. It reminded me a lot of like something like again, I'm not comparing the quality here before you roast me, but in some ways it reminded me of something like like a Wizards and Warriors or the games that are cunningly designed to make you want to kill yourself.
Well,
That's
another another Euro platformer. So there you go.
This game takes that. It's that kind of platforming game where if you miss a jump, you've got to negotiate your way back through a whole bunch of other jumps to get back to the original place to try the jump again. There's a ton of that in this game. Once you get off the first level, is not the worst. When you get to the second and third levels of this, you're in flavor country.
There's a lot of blind jumps, and there's a lot of things that they could have done differently to make the game less frustrating. But again, part of the challenge of a game like this is they needed to come up with ways to extend the game time. They were afraid of making the game too easy. And also they wanted you to use all of these, like you have to find, if you don't find the store that has the glide, tool, then you're going to have a real hard time, because there are some places where you have to depend on that to be able to make these jumps and things, or it makes it a lot easier and a lot less frustrating. This game gives you 2 lives right off the bat. You can purchase more. That is one thing that this game improved on with Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy was one and done. It was extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So that's one thing going for it. But on the whole, this is not a horrible game. It's definitely among the better of the Euro platformers that I've played because of its level design. It does not have the caverns of getting lost immediately that you have in a game like Turrican. I was able to get around all of the stages pretty easily, and I never felt like I was totally lost. This game leans a lot more towards Super Frog than Yo-Jo or something like that, or even Lionheart. This game, I would give it, I would say this game is probably a solid B- altogether. If I were a kid and this was what I had to play, if I had an Amiga at home and I wanted the Wonder Boy experience, of course, what else are you going to play? This is going to give it to you. And I really feel like given enough time, I could have overcome the sort of issues that I had with various states. It's a challenging game. I don't think that it's an unfair game.
I would. Well, I mean, it's a game where you're going to fail a lot, but you're not just going to die from the failures.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 16 level game, and you also have, I believe it's like 8 big bad guys to fight along the way. So and I will say the end boss fights, I only got to see 3 of them, but the 3 I saw were. Yeah, they're okay. I mean,
they're pretty uninspired. They don't have set patterns. There's no strategy used to defeat them. They're again, it's a very rudimentary school of boss fights. Like this is a pretty rudimentary understanding of the platforming genre.
This is it's funny. You just took the words out of my mouth. This game, it's got all the basic stuff you would expect in sort of a we're figuring it out platformer. Yeah. It's got collapsing platforms. It's got those god-awful platforms that you have to walk as they go. Mm-hmm. And like there's a point in the forest level where or maybe it's in the tunnel. I can't remember. But anywhere, you have to, there are areas where you can jump off the platforms, but you can't jump because there's something hanging over you. And so you've got to, on one of those moving platforms, you've got to walk along with it and literally step off of it onto the platform to get past this here because you can't jump because there's something over you. I must have failed at that 100 times. And when you fall, you've got to go all the way back. You've got to fight the creatures that respawn.
Oh, there's only one problem in this game. The one serious problem that I have with the mechanics, and it's the falling mechanics. In this game, there are several areas where you have no choice but to fall down a pit. Okay,
tons of them, yeah.
And in this game, whenever you fall a certain distance, you lose control over yourself, and you become dazed when you hit the ground. Okay. They always put an enemy there to attack you while you're dazed, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you're taking damage that you cannot prevent, and that's horrible game design.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I'm naive, or maybe I give them too much credit, because you're right. There are tons and tons and tons of places where you take leaps of faith, and plenty of places where you're going to take damage when you hit the ground, and you have no choice. And there's a beast down there, and they time it, or like, if you're waiting for a platform to come up and down, the bad guy's time to come over and screw you every time the platform gets there. It's like, I mean, it's not like they just threw crap together. Like, these were skillfully designed levels, if the skill is trying to make you angry. If this is
Right.
if you're one of these people that like these sorts of games, this is okay. I'll give them that. But I mean, rudimentary, yes. Like I couldn't get past the way it looked, which is sad. But once I played it for a while, I spent probably in one evening. I spent probably 4 hours playing this thing. I kid you not. And it's that kind of game because I felt like a geek. I can't get past that. And the thing is, like you said, the difficulty level. It's not like you're playing Shadow of the Beast or something. It's not like relentlessly difficult. It's just frustrating because when you miss a jump, you've got to go back through a whole level to get back to the point where you can try again. It's that kind of game. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Now, we mentioned that this thing got ported everywhere, Boat. You said you tried a fair portion of these ports.
Yeah, and it's funny, I played the Game Boy version. The Game Boy version is HUD free because they have you got the ability to use multiple buttons.
Right.
The Lynx version also HUD free. Of course, the Lynx screen is so small; it's got such a small pixel count that you're really zoomed in on the action on that. The Game Boy port I played, I think, a little bit better than the Amiga port. It was a little bit less floaty. We're looking at the DOS version right now. Looks like the DOS version has a little bit of a less floaty jump as well. I'm not sure if they tweaked these later releases. I'm sure that they did because they're trying to sell as many copies as they can. But of course, the Game Boy version has the obvious graphical limitations, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. It reminded me of, remember a long time ago on a show that Brent was on Amigos, you guys did the Blues Brothers, Brent dropped the bomb that the Amiga version was actually ported from the Game Boy version. And this was that kind of reminded me of that, where the Game Boy version, not bad at all. So
I looked at a couple of the different versions. I didn't play any of the other versions. I mean, the PC version, for example, it's not nearly as colorful as the Amiga version. I mean, this game gets better when you start getting when you acquire magic and you start having the ability to shoot heat-seeking fireballs, and you become a master. Now, the downside of this is we didn't mention how you launch this stuff, which you have to pull down on the joystick.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to
it's not the best.
A ton of these. This game really could have used multi-button support like badly, because that's a real problem. And that's one thing you could probably get away with on other machines that's going to do better for you is the actual controls. I mean, I thought the game played fair with the controls. It's just, it was just diabolical. But the button situation is a problem. Having to get up and screw with the keyboard, we both hate that. So that was an issue I had. In terms of how this did amongst the press, Bo, how did you look at any of the reviews on this at all when you were messing around with it? How do you think
I did not?
How do you think it did with the press? I'm just quizzing.
Boy, I would say that in the Amiga press, it probably did pretty well. I would say that this probably got in the 80s. Am I wrong?
Yes. So this came out in 1990.
Right.
And I think a lot of the people that reviewed this just looked at it and were like, what the heck? No, I mean, it did get some good reviews. The people at Lemon give this a 7.36. The people over Hall of Light, the lower score is 65%, a little lower. Amiga Action gave this a 79. Amiga Computing gave it an 85. Amiga Joker gave it a 73. Amiga Power.
So that's good.
Now, the Amiga Power review didn't come until September of 92. So that was well after this had been released. I'm assuming at that point it had been released as a budget title. They give it a 29%. They just dropped the hammer.
Well, I mean, in 92, there was a lot that happened between 90 and 92 in the platform.
I don't know. It's a budget title, though. That's not. I mean, if you get it for like a couple quid, you're doing okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was selling for at that time.
Dator Magazine in 91 gave it 9 out of 10, and the average scores, according to Lemon, 67%. By the way, just a special shout out to Lemon, because while we were off, they got hacked. And I'm glad to see and as did Lemon C64, I'm glad to see that they got it up and running again. And to the suckers that hacked it, shame on you. What are you doing? Who did they ever hurt? Nobody. I looked this up on eBay. You get it for $76. I saw one that sold for 20 in the box. So I'm guessing 76 is a hope and a dream. Did we get any Discord action on this one, Boater?
We did. We got one. Jocko 6502 writes, "This is my first time with the game, so no rose-tinted glasses for me." It isn't a bad game, but it is a chore to play. Multiple collapsing or moving platform sections and backtracking force you to redo level sections. And moving platforms sometimes carry you along and sometimes not even if they look the same. Sparsely populated levels with forgettable baddies needing multiple hits to kill regardless of size difference. But let's address the elephant in the room. The timer. It's crap. Viking Child requires exploration, but that takes time and your health is depleted every time the sand timer runs out. You can't really do anything about this other than constantly go shopping to top up. Shopping for health and limited weapon supplies requires you to kill all enemies and randomly poke at scenery with your sword of inadequacy, basically wasting time you don't have to find coins. Sisyphean challenge, anyone? The shop itself gets tiresome very quickly as you wait for the goblin thing to move or kick stuff off shelves into your inventory. And if you play in sound effects mode, pro tip, don't. The whole affair is silent. Now, I like Rick Dangerous, so I'm clearly crazy, but I played Viking Child for a couple of hours and could not get into it. So for me, this is a solid pass, an 8-bit game with 16-bit clothing loosely draped over it, 5 out of 10. Good review from Pajaco.
You know, 8-bit game with 60-bit cloak. This game, you mentioned that you wouldn't see that kind of screen set up on like a console. And you know, this is we've talked this before. This is one of those games that like they held on to the old way for too long. You know, with the menu, the way it's set up, the way it looks. He's right. In 1990 on the Amiga, those borders, that should all be gone. There's a more efficient, more modern way to display that stuff. One thing I will say before we check out of this one, and we didn't mention it, I didn't mention it anyway, is that this game doesn't have any game saves. It's got the old password system boot. That's not the worst. It's not the worst. But I mean, I guess they didn't want to implement password saves because of the. My guess is they had planned on porting this to everything, and so they're going to keep it simple for the humanoids, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly. So overall, Boat said he thought it was a B-. I'm going to go. It's in the ballpark. Let's say B-, C+. Not a horrible game, but I don't think I'll go back to it, Boater.
If you ask any Amiga repair technician what the most problematic component of a motherboard is, they'll undoubtedly mention capacitors. The electrolytic capacitors that shipped with the Amiga are 30 years old or older at this point, and each one is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode battery acid all over your motherboard, sometimes damaging it irrevocably. Don't wait. Replace your capacitors now. Full capacitor kits for every Amiga model are available now at RetroRewind.ca. Don't want to attempt the repair yourself? Use their white glove recap service and leave the intricate removal and soldering process to the professionals using industry standard equipment. Use the promo code Amigos10 at checkout and save 10% off your cap kit or service. Remember, make RetroRewind.ca your first stop for all your Commodore computer needs.
Amiga News.
Campbell Train.
All right, Aaron, the Amiga news is hot and heavy this week. We're going to start. Our first story comes from one of the most popular YouTubers in the UK. This is Ahoy. Ahoy has done several series on the Amiga in the past, always wildly popular. His subject of this video is the claim that is commonly trotted out. Nobody knows how many Amigas Commodore sold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Ahoy, he goes and when you watch this video, he takes you. He could have told you this in 30 seconds. He takes you through his whole procedure for getting this data. It's kind of an interesting story, Aaron. You want to summarize it for us?
This is one of my all-time favorite Amiga videos. Okay, because I'm not familiar with this fellow, and apparently a lot of other people are. I don't know if I've seen any of his stuff before, but he made me a fan because he tries to break down exactly how many Amigas were sold. We've speculated on this for years, Boat.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of climbs down into the rumors. Like, what are the rumors? Where did they come from? Where are they mentioned? And then he he uses common sense thinking and an educated mind to delve into the places where you could actually get figures, including the minutes from stockholder meetings. And he manages to get hold of several, I think 3 of the stockholder reports for key years in the Amiga, including the year before they died. And then you can use the figures that because you can't lie on those. I mean, you can, but you'll get in trouble. But you're supposed to tell the truth. And he uses those to not only try to take a educated guess at how many Amigas there are in the world, but he also separates numbers that shouldn't be there. Like there were a couple numbers mentioned on various web pages that were taken from interviews or magazine articles that they find out that a number they were jostling around were actually the total number of Commodore machines sold, not just Amigas but C64s, and of course that's going to slant the numbers up significantly. You know, when you add all those things in, and what I like about this piece is that he debunks the things that need to be debunked, but he's not working an angle. He's just trying to get a straight figure. He's not trying to inflate a figure. He's not trying to deflate it. And I think by the end of this video, you're going to come up with a figure that I would say is probably the most accurate figure you're going to come around to. Now, I'm no inventory specialist or world surplus genius when it comes to stock or inventory, but I mean, he lets you follow everything he does, and it's done in a way where he convinced me that he knew what he was doing, Bode. I was real impressed with this. Well,
I had to laugh because, I've been talking to people, everybody from Mr. Pleasance to the Mike Battaglia from Cloanto. I've talked to a lot of kind of high up guys about the number of Amigas that they think have been sold over time.
Uh-huh.
And the conventional wisdom that all of these guys, plus all the articles I ever read, was about 5 million.
Yeah.
And so it tickled me that Ahoy, spends 10 or 15 minutes going through all these stock reports, analyzing all the data, getting to the final factual answer. And he came up with, around 5 million.
Right.
So,
yeah.
we had the answer before, but now we have the answer with the data.
Well, yeah, because the answer before was just some suckers talking. You know what I mean? Right. I mean, right. I think what is also interesting is that you do get numbers for individual countries on occasion. You do get numbers for individual years. How was the Amiga doing the year they went belly up? What was happening? Mm-hmm. Well, he mentions they couldn't keep stock. They couldn't pay their people that were building stuff for them. And then how did the people after Commodore went out? How did they do? Not so good, turns out.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I tell you, from a production perspective, the way that he uses graphics and according to Pixels at Dawn, he does all of his own stuff. He's very, very good at portraying the numbers and doing it in such a way that it's exciting to watch. So I really encourage you to watch this video. It's very good.
This is, if you're going to watch anything we recommend, it's only 13 minutes long. This is the big winner, Boat.
Yeah. Now coming up here, and we're going to plug another video for a different reason. This is Amiga Mascot Platformers Ranked. Now you may remember, Aaron, a few years ago, I started a series called The Ranking of Amiga Platformers.
Yeah.
Much like most of the things in my life, I got tired of it, lost interest, and dropped it like a bad tomato. But this is a guy. What is his name? Brian Sharp. He goes through and he does essentially what I was going to do. I don't think he has a spreadsheet like I had where he was, but he basically just does it with ones that he likes. The reason why I brought this up is that he uses this piece of software that gives you can take these icons and you can drag them across the screen. It's called Tier Maker. Yeah. I thought this would be a really fun thing to do, Aaron. Maybe you and Brent could do this as part of Thanks for Giving, or we could do it as part of Amigathon, where we take a game, games in a certain genre and rank them with tiers. The tiers go essential, recommend, good, fair, poor, rubbish, whatever. We can set the parameters however we like, but it's a really neat graphical way to show how we rank things. I hadn't seen this before. Had you heard of Tier Maker before, Aaron?
I watched a show called The Worst Fighting Game Ever. I love this show. It's a series. And of course, his rankings are from like it ain't bad to like the worst with like stinky and horrible. Those are his rankings because there's not a game he plays on there that's any good generally. So I have seen the tier system. I do like it. I didn't realize it was an actual piece of software that you could do it yourself. So yeah, I'd be all for that, Boater. I've got I have to say I hadn't heard of this until I saw it pop up in the news. We've covered. I'm looking through the list here. We've covered so many of these over the years, but we haven't covered all of them. But we have covered so many of them, and he goes through them in alphabetical order. I mean, just dozens of these things. So I'm absolutely going to watch this video. This is right up my alley. Now, see, it's mascot platforms. When I first saw it, I thought it was Amiga mascots ranked, which I'd be interested in doing that sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, today's guy would not rank highly. I would, but he'd be in the Switchblade 2 category of suck. Yeah, this looks good. I've not heard of this fellow, but I'll definitely check this out. It's Amiga mascot platformers ranked. Good find there, Boater.
Next up, Aaron, one of the biggest releases to come out of the Amiga of recent times is a game called Roguecraft.
Absolutely.
From Badger Punch Games. They released their physical copies of Roguecraft earlier in the year. And if you recall, one of the very first people to demo Roguecraft out in the real world was our own 48K RAM at Boatfest.
Yeah.
So they're really, really cool. This game has now been released in digital form for those of us that are no longer collecting physical new games. And previously in the week, it was on sale for $7.99. I picked it up then. It's now at its regular price, $9.99. Listen, if you're at all a fan of Rogue games, anything from the Rogue to the Dungeons of Dreadmore, the Stone Soup, anything like that, this game is a must play. I'm a huge fan of Rogue games. This is a beautiful isometric Rogue title with the classic bump up against the guy, you bump up against the monster to attack him. It's a beautiful game. It's got beautiful art. And if you don't want the physical, if you do want the physical copies, I believe they are currently waiting for a second printing. But if you just want to pick up the game on the cheaper right now, $10 is a steal.
There's a $45 version of this. It's like the King Dong version, but if you want to just get a physical copy, the standard edition is only $20. Not too bad. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Boat, for Amiga Cammy's thing, I think this was amongst the.
Yeah, this was the Game Jam entry. This was a Game Jam entry. So this was all birthed from that.
I played this last year, and you could tell even then, it's like this is going to be a real wing ding. $10. This is a auto buy. I mean, people listen. If you're one of these people that hold on to the Amiga, you spend all your money upgrading your Amiga. You want to have the King Dong Amiga. Get the King Dong stuff that they're making for it too. Because after you spend all that money on that terrible fire card or whatever, drop $10, $20 on this. Get these guys motivated to keep the ball rolling. This thing will run on a A500. There's a PAL version, but then in this day and age, you can get it past it. It'll run on pretty much everything. Requires a meg of chip and a meg of anything else, or 2 megs of chip RAM. You'll be good to go. I think it's a winner, Boat. I really do.
Too.
I'm glad you picked that up because we'll be playing that for sure.
Absolutely. Coming up next, Aaron. One of your favorite arcade games, Elevator Action, getting an Amiga conversion. Aaron, tell us why you love Elevator Action so much.
Well, my God, it's a Tato classic, Boat. And it's a simple concept. You're a spy. You've got to get the secret plans. You got to get them out of the building before the other spies get you. And and it's exactly, the name is exactly what it is. It's Elevator Action. You're running up and down stairs and up and down elevators and escalators to escape the other bad guys. I didn't know about this till this exact second, Boat, as I clicked on this. Another JOTD joint. You guys know that I'm a big fan of his work. I've done a couple streams featuring his stuff, and he never disappoints. I mean, he always comes through. And I'll tell you something, because you know me, Boat. If you drop the ball in some of these classics, I'm going to call you to go to the carpet. But JOTD in his capable hands, I have no fear. I have a feeling this is top shelf. It's a great game. If you're not familiar with the arcade game, I suggest you pick this up. Now, I'm looking at what he's got here. It's a work in progress. This one was reverse engineered, a little bit of transcode in there. It says here the music's incomplete, and the music on this is pretty iconic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Although it's repetitive, but it's pretty iconic. But this looks great. I'm excited to get to play this. And you can download it right now in its current state. And JOTD is pretty good about coming back and actually fixing his stuff and updating it. So this is just another one to add to his ever-growing catalog of top-shelf games, Boat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll give it another shout out when it's released in its full form as well. Now, Aaron, we've been talking about Dr. Dangerous for a while. It's finally out. Dr. Dangerous is this is another one of those exploratory platforming games. It's got a little bit of Mega Man in it, a little bit of Spelunky in it. This is one that I really can't wait to play. I've been waiting for it to reach its final form. It really looks good. This is another Scorpion Engine game. Again, if you're developing a new game and you're using anything other than the Scorpion Engine, what are you doing? You're going to end up with a real Bruce Lee if you're not careful. So this game, Aaron, is, let's see, I'm trying to find who is in charge of it. This is Who Games 2017. I believe that, let's see, it is available from whogames2017.itch.io. It's a name your own price deal.
This looks pretty tight, Boat.
This is a full game. This is a full game. It's got, like I said, I think there's a lot of Mega Man. What do you see in this game, Aaron?
It seems like that I may have had a cup of coffee with an earlier purchase. I mean, some of this looks vaguely familiar. We did cover it before, so it might be that. This, what does this look like? It does look like something you play like the NES or something.
Mm-hmm. It looks better though. It's almost like a Super Nintendo type.
I'm talking gameplay wise.
Yeah.
I mean, you're clearing the levels. But I mean, it looks real nice. It's moving well. You're right about that. Irok's engine, and all credit to Irok for I believe he's the driving force behind that Scorpion engine. I mean, you knew Irok was all man for years, but I mean, once again, his engine has been used to turn out something great, and this does look solid. This is one I get not having a lot of familiarity to it. I don't want to sit down and play it, but I mean, just the looks of it, the platforming, and I like games where you run around and go up ladders and stuff. And this looks like a fun little kind of like multi-screen single like mission-based thing where you go around and collect stuff like key cards and whatnot, and do little exercises on each level. But it looks like I like these kind of games because you get the feeling that you're accomplishing something because they don't take 20 hours to get through a level. You're in and out. Right. That's what I like. So this looks like it's right up our alley, but we got to put this on the list. We've got a lot of these new games we're going to have to put on the list to cover. And this is, I mean, we've talked about 2 or 3 today. I mean, there are plenty of great games. I remember that shaky first year when we started this show. We never in our wildest dreams thought we'd be getting to play this sort of stuff on the Amiga. So like, this is the gravy time, everybody. I hope you know what we're doing here because 10 years ago, we were in bad shape game-wise, and now we're getting the good stuff. It's a real exciting boat.
That's right. And Aaron, that's going to wrap it up for this week. As always, you can find links to all of the Amiga News stories over at the Amiga News subreddit. We invite you to join us over there as well.
Yeah, that's some excellent stuff there, Boater.
What do we got coming up next week on Amigos?
Let's find out. It's the old-fashioned Honda motorcycle simulator. Was it RNF? Honda?
RVF, I think.
Oh, RVF. Sorry, they tricked me. It's micro style. They've got a pretty good track record, so we'll just have to see how it goes. I'll be honest, I've never heard of this one. But
yeah. No, I haven't. I always think about the Beach Boys song "Little Honda."
Yeah,
not a real motorcycle, just a groovy little motorbike. Did you ever want to get a little moped or a scooter and ride it around town?
Well, I've thought about doing that, but the problem is I don't pay good enough attention to ride a motorbike. That's a problem. I would be killed very quickly, and as a younger man, I would have been dead too. I need the safety and security and the extra seconds that a car allots you. For motorcycle, I'd be scared all the time about hitting bumps and stuff. Plus, with I watch a lot of these fail videos, and forever I'm seeing suckers. I mean, I see a lot of car wrecks, but I see these suckers on bikes and motorcycles just getting slaughtered all over the place.
Oh yeah,
I need airbags and cold steel around me to keep me safe. But
the comforts of the cabin is what I call it.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Plus, you got I don't want to be out in the weather. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not going to get one of those leather outfits. I'm just not going to do it. I don't have that kind of money, to be honest.
Do you remember, Aaron? It seemed like every year. I don't know. I feel sort of bad for these poor guys. Every year in the Guinness World Book of Records book, they'd always have a listing for the fattest people, and then they'd have a separate listing for the fattest twins, and they'd always show these two twins, fat guys riding around on motorcycles. Do you remember that picture?
Oh yeah, it's a famous picture. It's like remember the picture of the guy with all the cigarettes in his mouth?
Right.
It's a lot like that one.
Yeah.
There are these certain pictures that are just you never forget, and that's another one. The fat guys and the cigarette guy.
They marketed this book to kids. I bought it at the book fair. You see a guy smoking 400 cigarettes at once.
Wonder how he's doing today.
I don't know. Check in with him in the next Amigos interview.
Yeah, that sometimes he'd be trying to be holding the microphone to the dirt. So I figured it would be happening. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It should be a lot of fun. And I'll tell you one thing: when it comes to motorcycle riding, you look like you were over in Thailand, and I know they had a lot of motorcycles and scooters and whatnot over there. And didn't you say you got? Did you take scooter taxis and stuff over there?
Oh yeah, yeah. You want to talk about terrifying? Try getting on the back of a motorcycle taxi and weaving in and out of traffic in between buses where you got to tuck in your knees. You'll bang into the sides of moving vehicles.
Did that happen?
It's scary. Oh heck yeah, heck yeah. And I'm one of these people. I don't have a good sense of internal balance.
I can understand.
So it's like,
that.
and it's like when you're a hot chick and you're on the back of a bike, you wrap your arms around the guy in front of you. Well, when you're a bald tubby dude on the back of a motorcycle, that's not an option. So what you got to do is you got to put your arms behind you and you're holding on to the back of the seat. You look like a real doofus, is what you look like. That's what I look like.
When I was down in Mexico, down in Reynosa, in that area, I saw a lot of people in scooters and motorcycles. But and I was going to ask you, it's like this in Thailand. It didn't seem like there were any well-defined borders or lines. Separate the traffic. It was just like crazy time down there, and I'm sure people just get routinely killed on the roads.
That's what's in Thailand. It's the number one cause of tourist death is motorcycle accidents.
Really?
You can just rent a motorcycle. You just walk up to a guy, hand him the equivalent of $10, they give you a motorcycle. There's no test. There's nothing.
Is you having been quite the world traveler? Have you ridden or drove anywhere like Thailand before or since?
No, Thailand is pretty unique. I mean, you hear about everything's relative. I'm sure the traffic in India is worse. Thailand, there are lines and there are sort of traffic patterns, just they're ignored.
Yeah, that was my question, because I mean, clearly it's dangerous. Clearly you can be killed. I just always wondered if someone decided to say, wait a minute, everybody, there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah,
But I mean, I see videos of tons and tons of traffic and people in scooters just skipping right past it on wherever they want. Yeah,
the motorcycles just have a separate set of laws, and that set of laws is there are no laws, and so it's just and like I said, it's a very cheap way to travel. If I needed to get somewhere quick, that's the best way to get there. Because if you're in a car taxi, you're sitting in traffic forever. But in Thailand, you just go up you're up on the sidewalk, whatever it takes.
Don't you have to weigh getting somewhere quickly or dying? Is when you're did you wait? You were young back in those days. I bet you changed.
I was so much less risk averse back then in those days. Now I wouldn't even leave my apartment.
Did you ever ride the bike, drive the thing around?
So I've only tried to attempt to ride a motorcycle once. It was on the day before my wedding.
Yeah,
we were in Thailand. We were in Eep's hometown.
Yeah.
And her old motorcycle's there. And I was like, man, I'm trying to ride this thing. And so I started up and I'm like, whoa, and it's just her aunt came out, she started screaming, she's like, you're gonna kill yourself before your wedding, get off, And then she was right. I got off the motorcycle.
Did you drive a bulldozer or something while you were over there?
I might have sat in the bulldozer when it was not moving.
So you could get yourself over. You could get yourself over. Just say, "Listen, I drove a bulldozer." So you just sat in it. You didn't actually.
I just sat in it. That was the bulldozer they brought in to tear out the jungle so they could make the road to bring in the big speakers.
Man, Thailand. You should do a boat travel show and talk about that. That'd be a fun listen right there.
That was one of these days.
Pod Jam 2025. Yeah, there's your new Pod Jam.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. All right, guys, we're gonna hang it up this week. If you're watching us live, stay tuned for Ask the Amigos. We will see you next week for RVF Honda. If you like the show and you want to support us, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We'll see you next time, and until then, adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.